Her billionaire husband brought his mistress to Christmas dinner, but her calm smile was the beginning of her revenge. I stood up at the head of my dining table, lifted my wine glass, and smiled at my husband's mistress sitting across from me. The room went quiet. Everyone was watching, and then I said the words that would change everything. I want to toast to honesty, to facing the truth, no matter how ugly it is, to consequences. Have you ever had to smile when your world was ending? Have you ever been told to be civil while being disrespected in your own home? My billionaire husband brought his mistress to our Christmas dinner and told me to behave. So I smiled. But that smile, it cost him everything. Let me tell you how a queen handles disrespect and why you should never mistake grace for weakness. Before we get into this story, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Trust me, this is one Christmas dinner nobody will ever forget. Drop a comment right now telling me, have you ever had to stay calm when you wanted to explode? Let's get into it. That's when the screens turned on. 3 massive screens throughout our dining room lighting up with evidence I'd been collecting for weeks. Bank statements, text messages, photos of my husband and this woman on beaches I'd never been to, hotels, restaurants, and the final blow, documents showing he'd hidden over $200 million and put it in her name. My husband went white. "Marcus," she stammered, "what is this? What the hell is this?" His mistress started crying. His mother gasped so loud it echoed through our 32-room mansion. And his business partners, the ones who'd invested hundreds of millions in his company, they just sat there with their phones, already out, already calculating how fast they could distance themselves from the scandal that was about to consume him. But me, I just kept smiling. "What you're seeing," I said, my voice calm as a summer morning, "is the truth." While my husband was telling me to be civil, to smile and play nice, while his mistress sat at my table, he was stealing from our family. While he was demanding I accept this disrespect in my own home, he was planning to destroy me in divorce court. I walked over and placed a leather folder in front of him. "These are divorce papers. They include every piece of evidence of your fraud, your infidelity, and your attempt to hide our assets. There's also a restraining order preventing you from accessing or moving any more money. As of 4 hours ago, everything is frozen." Then I turned to her, the young woman in the too tight white dress who thought she'd won. "And for you, sweetheart, there's a lawsuit for fraud and accepting stolen property. Those apartments he bought you, that gallery space, the car, all purchased with my money. I'm taking every single thing back. You can keep the memories." Have you ever had to smile when your world was ending? Have you ever been told to be civil while being disrespected in your own home? My billionaire husband brought his mistress to our family Christmas dinner and told me to behave. So I smiled. But that smile, it cost him everything. Let me tell you how a queen handles disrespect and why you should never, ever mistake grace for weakness. Before we get into this story, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications for Cedar Light Love Stories. Trust me, this is one Christmas dinner nobody will ever forget. Drop a comment right now telling me, have you ever had to stay calm when you wanted to explode? Let's get into it. My name is Vivian, and 14 years ago, I married a man who made billionaires look ordinary. Marcus Aldridge wasn't just wealthy. He was generational wealth, old money mixed with new empire. His family owned half the commercial real estate in Manhattan. We're talking entire blocks, buildings with names you'd recognize, the kind of property that's been in the family since the 1800s. And Marcus, he took that foundation and built something even bigger. Hotels across 3 continents, 5-star properties in Paris, Monaco, Dubai, Tokyo, Sydney. Investment portfolios that made Wall Street analysts nervous. Private equity, tech startups, real estate developments that reshaped city skylines. The kind of money where you don't ask the price of anything because numbers become irrelevant. And me? I was the girl from Baltimore who'd put herself through medical school working 3 jobs. I grew up in a neighborhood where gunshots were the soundtrack to summer nights, where my mother cleaned houses to feed us, where people told me I'd be lucky to graduate high school, let alone become a doctor. But I didn't just become a doctor. I became one of the youngest cardiac surgeons in the country, a black woman in a field dominated by white men who looked at me like I was lost every time I walked into an operating room. I performed my first solo open-heart surgery at 29. By 32, I had a reputation for taking cases other surgeons wouldn't touch, the impossible ones, the patients everyone else had given up on. And I brought them back. When Marcus and I met at a charity gala, it wasn't about his money. I had my own success, my own shine. I was wearing a dress I'd bought with money I'd earned saving lives, driving a car I'd purchased outright, living in a condo I owned free and clear. We fell in love because we were both relentless, both hungry for excellence, both understood what it meant to be exceptional in rooms where people expected us to fail. Him as a black man in the world of old money and power, me as a black woman in medicine. Our wedding was featured in 3 major magazines, 200 guests at his family's estate in the Hamptons. It was beautiful. It was perfect. It was everything I'd never let myself dream about as a little girl in Baltimore. We had 3 children. Isaiah, our oldest, is 12 now, smart as hell, reading at a college level, plays piano like he was born with music in his fingers. Then the twins, Zara and Elijah. They just turned 9. Zara wants to be an astronaut. Elijah wants to be a chef. They're beautiful and brilliant, and they're everything to me. Our home in Connecticut is something people take helicopter tours to see from above. 32 rooms, including a ballroom where we hosted the kind of Christmas parties that made the society pages every year. There's an indoor pool, a home theater, a wine cellar that holds over 3,000 bottles, gardens that require a staff of 4 just to maintain. But despite all that wealth, despite all that excess, I insisted on keeping certain traditions intimate and sacred. Christmas Eve was always just family, just us, Marcus's mother Vivian, and my brother Tobias with his wife Maya and their kids. It was the one night where we weren't the Aldridges of Aldridge Holdings. We were just us. I'd spend weeks planning every detail. This year, I'd had the entire estate decorated like a winter palace. There were ice sculptures in the garden that cost more than most people's cars. A 15-foot tree in the main hall covered in ornaments we'd collected from every country we'd visited together. Austria, Japan, Morocco, South Africa. Each one held a memory. I'd commissioned a famous chef, but I still insisted on making certain dishes myself. My grandmother's sweet potato pie, the honey-glazed ham recipe I'd perfected over the years, macaroni and cheese made the way my mother taught me. Some things money can't buy. Some things you have to make with your own hands. We were black excellence personified, the kind of success story people wrote articles about, the kind of couple that made other people believe anything was possible. But somewhere around July of last year, the man I'd built this life with started disappearing even when he was standing right in front of me. You know that feeling when something fundamental shifts? It's not dramatic at first. It's quiet. It's subtle. It's the way someone stops looking at you during conversations, the way their laugh sounds different when they're on the phone, the way they suddenly need to shower the moment they come home. Marcus started taking calls in other rooms. I'd walk into his study and he'd quickly say, "Let me call you back," and hang up. When I'd ask who it was, he'd say, "Just business," and change the subject. His business trips got longer and more frequent. Monaco for a week, Dubai for 10 days, Singapore for 2 weeks, places we used to travel to together, holding hands on flights, exploring cities side by side. Now they were destinations where I wasn't invited. When I'd suggest coming along, he'd wave his hand dismissively. "It's all meetings, Vivian. You'd be bored. I'll make it up to you." But he never did make it up to me. He just kept disappearing. His phone was always face down now. Always. On the nightstand, on the kitchen counter, on his desk, like it held secrets he couldn't risk me seeing, even by accident. And when it would buzz with notifications, he'd snatch it up so fast you'd think it was on fire. I'm a surgeon. I'm trained to notice details. The slight irregularity in a heartbeat. The subtle change in tissue color that indicates something's wrong. The pattern that everyone else misses but could mean the difference between life and death. And I started noticing patterns with Marcus. He'd come home and immediately head to the shower. Every single time, even if he'd only been gone a few hours. Even in the middle of the day, he'd walk in, kiss me on the forehead without really looking at me, and say, "I need to wash off the day." One night in August, he came home at 11, said he'd been at dinner with investors, but when he kissed me, I smelled perfume, not cologne, not some scent that could be explained away by hugging a colleague. Perfume, floral and young and sweet. I didn't say anything that night. I just filed it away, added it to the list of things that felt wrong. The first real crack appeared in September. I was taking his suits to the dry cleaner. We had staff who could do it, but I'd always been hands-on with certain things. Like to feel useful, like to feel like a wife, and not just some lady who lived in a mansion. I was going through the pockets to make sure they were empty, and I found a receipt. Cartier. $38,000 for a diamond bracelet. I stood there in our closet, holding that piece of paper, and my hands started shaking. My birthday had passed in August. Marcus had given me a beautiful necklace. Emeralds and white gold. Stunning. But it wasn't from Cartier, and it definitely wasn't worth $38,000. I knew because I'd seen the box, the brand, the price point. So, who got the Cartier bracelet? When Marcus came home that evening, I was waiting for him in the kitchen. Calm, composed, I held up the receipt. "Honey, I found this in your jacket. $38,000 bracelet from Cartier. That's quite a client gift." He didn't even flinch, didn't stutter, didn't pause. "That's exactly what it is," he said, kissing my forehead. "Major deal closing with the Singapore partners. You know how it is. These gestures matter in their culture." He said it so smoothly, so convincingly, and I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to believe him. So I smiled and nodded and said, "Of course, that makes sense," but it didn't make sense. Not really, because in all our years together, I'd never known Marcus to buy $38,000 gifts for business deals. That's what corporate gift services were for. Watches maybe. Wine. Art. But not Cartier bracelets. October brought more signs. I started checking credit card statements I'd never worried about before. We had money. Lots of it. What did it matter if Marcus spent $10,000 here or $20,000 there? But now, I was looking. Really looking. There were charges from luxury lingerie boutiques. La Perla. Agent provocateur. Expensive, delicate things. I own nice lingerie, sure, but these charges were on dates I hadn't received anything. On dates, Marcus had been traveling. There was a weekend at a resort in St. Bart's. $22,000 for a 3-night stay in a beachfront villa. But I definitely hadn't been to St. Bart's. And when I checked my calendar for those dates, Marcus had told me he was in London for business meetings. I sat at my desk in my home office, scrolling through statements on my laptop, and felt something cold settling into my chest. My best friend Janelle called me that afternoon. We'd been friends since medical school. She knew me better than anyone. And the moment she heard my voice, she knew something was wrong. "What's going on, Viv?" I told her about the receipt, the charges, the feeling in my gut that something was deeply, fundamentally wrong. "Hire a private investigator," she said immediately. "Don't wait. Don't hope it's nothing. Trust your gut." But I couldn't do it, not yet, because hiring an investigator meant admitting my marriage might be over. It meant accepting that the man I'd built a life with, the father of my children, might be betraying me. My brother Tobias had different advice when I called him. Confront Marcus directly. Ask him straight up if he's cheating. Don't play detective. Just ask. But I kept thinking about my children, about Isaiah asking his father for help with his math homework, about the twins climbing into Marcus's lap to watch movies, about the life we'd built, the image we projected, the empire we'd created together. Maybe the stress of his expanding business empire was affecting him. Maybe I was reading too much into innocent things. Maybe I needed to be more understanding, more supportive. So I swallowed that voice in my head, the one that was screaming that I already knew the truth, the one that was telling me to run, to protect myself, to get out before it got worse. November was when I started losing sleep. Marcus came home one night around 10. I was already in bed, reading medical journals. He walked into our bedroom, and the smell hit me immediately. Perfume. That same floral, young, sweet scent I'd noticed before. Stronger this time. Unmistakable. I looked up from my journal. "You smell like perfume." He was already heading to the closet, taking off his watch. Product launch event for one of my hotel properties. Lots of people. Lots of hugging. You know how these things are. "What product?" He paused for just a fraction of a second. "The new spa line we're introducing at the Monaco property. Skincare products. Very high-end. They had models there spraying perfume samples everywhere." His answer was smooth, detailed, plausible. But that fraction of a second pause, that's what I noticed. That's what my surgeon's brain cataloged. "You're being paranoid, Vivienne," he said, and there was something in his tone. Something almost irritated, like I was inconveniencing him by asking questions. "You've been stressed. Maybe you should take some time off work. Rest. Paranoid." That word sat in my chest like a stone. I'm a black woman who became a cardiac surgeon in a field dominated by white men. I didn't get there by being paranoid. I got there by trusting my instincts, by seeing patterns, by knowing when something was wrong, even when everyone else said everything was fine. I started paying attention to everything, really paying attention. Marcus's phone was never left unattended anymore. He'd take it to the bathroom, to the kitchen for a glass of water, to the garage to check on his car. It was always within arm's reach. He'd changed all his passwords. Devices I used to be able to access freely, laptops we'd shared, accounts we'd both used. Suddenly I was locked out of everything. I tried to log into his calendar one day, something I'd done hundreds of times before to coordinate family schedules. Invalid password. I tried 3 variations I knew he used. All invalid. He'd changed everything. His assistant, Monica, who'd been copying me on his calendar appointments for years, suddenly stopped. When I called to ask why, she sounded uncomfortable. "Oh, Mr. Aldridge asked me to streamline the distribution list. Keep things more focused." More focused meant without me. His own wife. Marcus started going to the gym at odd hours. 5 in the morning before I woke up. 9 at night after the kids were in bed. He'd never been a fitness fanatic, but suddenly he was working out 6 days a week. Coming home showered and changed, of course, but with that glow people get after exercise. Except I couldn't shake the feeling he wasn't at the gym at all. One night in late November, I couldn't sleep. I went downstairs around 2 in the morning to make tea. Marcus's laptop was on the kitchen counter. He must have forgotten it when he went to bed. I stood there looking at it for a full minute, just staring, knowing that if I tried to open it and couldn't get in, I'd feel stupid. But also knowing I had to try. I opened it. Password protected, of course. I tried our wedding anniversary. Invalid. Our children's birthdays. Invalid. My birthday. Invalid. Every combination I could think of. All invalid. I closed it and went back to bed. Lay there in the dark next to my husband, this man I'd shared my life with for 14 years, and realized I didn't know him anymore. Or maybe I never had. December 19th. That's when my entire world exploded into 1,000 pieces. It was 6 days before Christmas. The house was already decorated. The tree was up. Presents were wrapped and hidden in the guest room closet. I'd spent the afternoon addressing Christmas cards and finalizing the menu for our Christmas Eve dinner. Marcus came home early, 4 in the afternoon. He usually worked until 9 or 10. Seeing him walk through the door while the sun was still up should have been my first warning. I was in the conservatory wrapping presents for the children. Christmas music was playing softly through the sound system. Nat King Cole singing about chestnuts roasting on an open fire. Snow was falling outside the windows, coating the gardens in white. It should have been a perfect moment. A scene from a holiday movie. Marcus stood in the doorway of the conservatory for a moment, just watching me. When I looked up, his face was serious. Like he'd made a decision and was steeling himself to follow through. "Vivian, we need to talk." Those 5 words, the ones that come before your life splits into before and after. I put down the wrapping paper slowly. My hands were suddenly cold. Okay. He sat down across from me in one of the wicker chairs. Didn't look at me directly. Looked at a point just past my shoulder. I've been having an affair. Just like that. No build-up. No gentle approach. Just 5 words that detonated everything I thought was real. I sat there with a half-wrapped toy in my hands. One of Elijah's Christmas presents. A complicated science kit he'd been begging for. The paper was silver with little snowflakes. I'd been so careful to get the corners crisp and neat. How long? My voice sounded strange. Far away. 8 months. 8 months. April. Since spring, since before summer. Since before I'd even started noticing the signs. Oh, her name is Gabrielle. She's an art dealer. I met her at an auction. He said it so calmly, so matter of fact, like he was telling me about a business transaction. No emotion. No guilt. Just information being delivered. I felt everything inside me go completely still, like my body knew it needed to shut down non-essential functions to survive what was coming. She makes me feel alive again, he continued, and now he was looking at me. She reminds me what passion feels like, what it's like to be with someone who isn't always working, always tired, always focused on everyone but me. And there it was. Somehow, this was my fault. My demanding career, my exhaustion from performing surgeries and raising 3 children, my focus on keeping our family together. That's what had driven him into another woman's arms. I wanted to scream, wanted to throw something, wanted to ask him if he understood what alive meant to me, if he'd ever watched me bring someone back from the edge of death in an operating room, if he'd ever considered that maybe I was tired because I was holding our entire family together while he was screwing a 20-something art dealer. But I didn't say any of that. I just sat there, holding that half-wrapped present, and waited for the rest, because I knew there was more. You don't come home early to confess an affair unless there's more. I'm not asking for a divorce, Marcus said, and that's when I finally looked at him. Really looked at him. What? I want both of you. You and Gabrielle. I want you to stay, to continue being Mrs. Aldridge, to maintain the image we've built, to protect the family brand, like our marriage was a corporation, like our vows were a business agreement. My mother is getting older, he said. A divorce would devastate her, and the business has several major deals pending. Any scandal right now could jeopardize hundreds of millions in investments. Shareholders get nervous about instability. Partners want to know you're solid, dependable. So, I was supposed to stay married to protect his business deals, to spare his mother's feelings, to maintain an image. I still hadn't said anything. Couldn't find words. They were stuck somewhere in my throat, tangled up with disbelief and rage, and a pain so sharp I thought I might actually be having a heart attack. And then Marcus hit me with the final blow, the one that made me realize this wasn't just betrayal. This was calculated destruction. I want to invite Gabrielle to our Christmas dinner, our family Christmas Eve dinner, with my mother, with Tobias and Maya, with the kids. Now, I found my voice. You want to bring your mistress to our family Christmas? I want you to welcome her, to be gracious, to act like a mature adult who understands that relationships are complex, that love isn't always contained in traditional boxes. He was using therapy language, relationship coaching buzzwords, like he'd been preparing for this conversation, rehearsing. The children, I said, and my voice was shaking now. You want to do this in front of our children? The children will be fine. They'll just see Daddy's friend joining us for dinner. They don't need to know anything else. Not yet. Not yet. Meaning eventually he planned to tell them. Eventually, he planned to normalize this, to make our children accept that Daddy had Mommy and also had Gabrielle. I stood up. The present fell from my lap onto the floor. I need you to leave. I need you to get out of this room right now. Marcus stood too. And that's when his face changed. The false gentleness disappeared. What was underneath was cold, hard. Vivian, you need to understand something. If you make a scene, if you embarrass me, if you make this difficult, I will file for divorce, and I will make it brutal. He stepped closer. I stepped back. I have lawyers who can tie up our assets for years. I can make sure the custody battle destroys you emotionally and professionally. Do you know what happens when a high-profile cardiac surgeon is dragged through a messy divorce? When questions are raised about her stability, her judgment, her ability to focus, he was threatening my career, my children, everything I'd worked for. I come from a family with unlimited resources, Vivian. Connections to judges, politicians, media. I can control the narrative. And you know what narrative plays well? Successful black businessman trying to save his marriage to his cold. Career-obsessed wife who cares more about her job than her family. There it was, the angry black woman narrative, the one that's been used to silence us forever. He knew exactly what he was doing. Knew that I'd spent my whole life fighting to be taken seriously. Fighting against stereotypes. Fighting to prove I was calm, rational, professional. One whiff of unstable or emotional in a public divorce, and my reputation would be damaged. Hospital boards would question my judgment. Patients would request different surgeons. Everything I'd built could crumble. He was counting on me choosing silence over chaos. "You're a strong woman, Vivian," he said, and his voice was almost gentle again. "You can handle this. Just smile. Be civil. Let Gabrielle come to dinner. Show everyone how mature and evolved you are." Then he walked out of the conservatory, left me standing there alone with Christmas music still playing and presents scattered on the floor. I heard him go upstairs, heard the shower turn on, like he'd just finished a business meeting and needed to wash off the day. Like he hadn't just shattered everything we'd built. That night, after Marcus went to bed like nothing world-shattering had just happened, I locked myself in my study, and I fell apart. Not the crying you see in movies, not dramatic sobbing with mascara running down my face. This was different. This was silent, the kind of crying where you're gasping for air because your lungs have forgotten how to work, where no sound comes out because the pain is too deep for noise, where your whole body shakes like you're having a seizure. I sat on the floor of my study with my back against the door and cried until I thought I might die from it, until my ribs hurt and my throat was raw and my eyes were so swollen I could barely see. The man I loved was gone. Maybe he'd never existed. Maybe I'd been married to an illusion for 14 years. And now he wanted me to smile and welcome his mistress into our home, into our sacred family space. Wanted me to do it on Christmas. Wanted our children there to witness my humiliation. I called Janelle at midnight. She answered on the first ring. "Viv, what's wrong?" I couldn't even speak at first. Just made these awful choking sounds. "I'm coming over," she said immediately. "No, the kids. I can't. I just needed to hear your voice." I told her everything. Every word Marcus had said. Every threat. Every demand. When I finished, there was silence on the line. Then Janelle said, very quietly, very clearly, "Don't you dare let him do this to you. I don't know what to do." "Yes, you do. You're Vivian Aldridge. You're the woman who performs miracles in operating rooms. You're the woman who's never lost a case she decided to win. You know exactly what to do." After we hung up, I called my brother Tobias, woke him up, told him everything. "I'm going to kill him," was Tobias's first response. "You're not going to kill him. Then what do you want me to do? Because I can't just sit here knowing he's doing this to you. Help me think. Help me figure this out." We talked for an hour, and somewhere in that conversation, somewhere between the rage and the pain and the disbelief, something shifted inside me. The surgeon woke up. The strategist, the woman who'd spent her whole life being twice as smart and 3 times as prepared just to get a seat at the table. Marcus wanted to play games? He wanted to use my strength against me? He wanted me to smile. I'd smile, but that smile was going to cost him everything. The next morning, December 20th, I met Janelle and Tobias at Janelle's penthouse in the city. I'd barely slept. Maybe an hour. I moved through the world like everything was underwater. Sounds were muffled. Colors were too bright. My body felt like it belonged to someone else. Janelle made coffee I couldn't drink. Tobias paced her living room like a caged animal. And I just sat there on her white couch, numb, Janelle sat down next to me and took my hands. Listen to me very carefully. You're not just going to survive this. You're going to destroy him, but you're going to be smart about it. Strategic. You're going to use every advantage you have. I don't have advantages. He has all the money, all the power, all the connections. Wrong, Tobias said, stopping his pacing. You have something he doesn't. You're smarter than him. You always have been. And that's when it clicked. When the fog in my brain started to clear. Marcus had inherited his money, born into it, never had to fight for anything. His family's real estate empire had been handed to him on a silver platter. Sure, he'd expanded it, grown it, but he'd started on third base. Me? I'd crawled up from nothing, worked 3 jobs to put myself through medical school, fought for every single opportunity, learned how to read people, how to strategize, how to survive in rooms where everyone expected me to fail. I was a cardiac surgeon. I'd held beating hearts in my hands and made split-second decisions that meant the difference between life and death. I'd stayed calm during 7-hour surgeries where one wrong move could kill someone. Marcus thought he could manipulate me because I loved him, thought he could use my strength, my composure, my grace against me, but he'd forgotten who he was dealing with. I need a lawyer, I said, the best divorce attorney in New York. Janelle smiled. I know just the person. That afternoon, I met Malcolm Reynolds at his office in Midtown. Corner office, 50th floor, views of the entire city. Malcolm and I had served on a hospital board together. I knew his reputation, ruthless, brilliant, the kind of lawyer who could find loopholes in airtight contracts and create favorable outcomes from impossible situations. He was expensive, $500 an hour expensive. But money wasn't a concern anymore. I sat across from Malcolm's massive desk and told him everything. Every detail, every threat Marcus had made, every demand. Malcolm took notes on a yellow legal pad. His face got harder with each sentence I spoke. When I finished, he put down his pen and leaned back in his leather chair. Vivian, before we do anything visible, anything that might alert Marcus to what we're doing, we need to know exactly what you're dealing with financially. I know what we have. I've seen the statements. Malcolm shook his head. Men like Marcus, men who make threats this specific, this calculated, they don't do it unless they've already built the weapon. I'd bet everything I own that he's been moving money, hiding assets, building a war chest for the divorce he's clearly been planning. You think he's been planning this longer than 8 months? I think the affair might be 8 months old, but the financial maneuvering? That could have been going on for years. A chill went through me. What do? We investigate. Quietly, carefully. We look at every account, every investment, every property. We trace every dollar. And we build a case that's so airtight, he won't have any choice but to settle on your terms. How long will that take? If we're fast? 4 days. We have forensic accountants who are very, very good at finding hidden money. 4 days. That would be December 24th. Christmas Eve. The day Marcus wanted to parade his mistress through our home. Do it, I said. Find everything. Malcolm smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. It was the smile of a predator who just spotted prey. This is going to be very satisfying. Over the next 3 days, Malcolm's team worked around the clock. Forensic accountants combing through financial records, private investigators tracking Marcus's movements, technology experts recovering deleted emails and text messages from devices in cloud storage. And what they found made me physically sick. Marcus had been planning this for over a year, maybe longer, long before he'd met Gabrielle. Maybe he'd been planning it our entire marriage, just waiting for the right moment. He'd moved massive amounts of money into offshore accounts. Cayman Islands, Switzerland, Singapore. Over $200 million that should have been in our joint accounts was gone, hidden in places designed to be untraceable. Properties had been purchased through shell corporations. A condo in Monaco, a penthouse in New York, a villa in Tuscany, all bought with what should have been marital assets, all titled in ways that made them appear to be separate property. There were trusts set up for Gabrielle, accounts in her name funded with millions of dollars. The Soho apartments, the gallery space where she supposedly worked, the car, all purchased with our money and given to her. He'd restructured his businesses in ways designed to make them appear less valuable in a divorce, shifted profitable divisions into separate entities, created debt where there wasn't any, made it look like his hotel empire was struggling when it was actually thriving. But here's what made my blood run cold. Here's what transformed my grief into pure, focused rage. Malcolm's team found emails, years of emails, between Marcus and his attorney, a man named Richard Castellano, discussing strategy for a potential divorce, planning how to position me. One email from 18 months ago, long before Gabrielle, read, "If it comes to divorce, we paint her as unstable, career obsessed, more devoted to her patients than her family. We use her demanding schedule against her in custody proceedings. We leverage any perceived anger or emotional outbursts as evidence she's unfit." Another email from a year ago, "The key is making her look like the stereotype, the angry black woman who couldn't satisfy her husband's needs. Media will eat that up, plays into existing narratives, makes Marcus sympathetic." They had a whole plan, a whole narrative. They'd been building it for years. While I was decorating Christmas trees with our children, Marcus was plotting how to destroy me. While I was performing life-saving surgeries, he was strategizing how to take my children away. While I was loving him with everything I had, he was planning my annihilation. I sat in Malcolm's office reading those emails on his computer screen, and something fundamental changed inside me. The grief burned away. The pain hardened into something else, something cold and sharp and absolutely lethal. Malcolm watched me read. When I finally looked up from the screen, he said quietly, "I've been doing this for 25 years. This is one of the most calculated, most cruel cases I've ever seen. Can we use all of this? Every single word. These emails are evidence of fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud, and potentially criminal tax evasion. The offshore accounts alone could trigger an IRS investigation. The properties purchased through shell corporations are textbook money laundering. I want him destroyed," I said. "Not hurt, not embarrassed, destroyed." Malcolm smiled that predator smile again. "Then, let's get to work. If you're still watching this, if this story is resonating with you, I need you to do something for me right now. Hit that like button. Subscribe to Cedar Light Love Stories. Turn on notifications because we have more stories coming that will blow your mind. And drop a comment telling me, have you ever been underestimated? Have you ever had someone mistake your grace for weakness? Tell me in the comments. Let's build a community of people who refuse to be broken. Now let me tell you how this all came together. December 21st through 23rd were a blur of preparation. On the surface, I was the perfect wife getting ready for Christmas. Underneath, I was building a nuclear weapon. Malcolm filed preliminary paperwork on December 21st. Everything sealed, everything confidential. Restraining orders ready to be executed the moment I gave the word. Injunctions preventing Marcus from accessing or moving any additional assets prepared and waiting for a judge's signature. We documented every single thing, every offshore account, every shell corporation, every property, every wire transfer. Malcolm's forensic accountants created a paper trail so detailed, so comprehensive, that there would be no wiggle room, no plausible deniability, no way for Marcus to claim ignorance or innocent mistakes. We had screenshots of every email between Marcus and his attorney discussing how to destroy me. Every text message between Marcus and Gabrielle, including the ones where they laughed about how naive I was, how easy it would be to handle me, how I was so focused on being the perfect surgeon and perfect mother that I'd never see it coming. There was one text from Marcus to Gabrielle that I'll never forget. It was from November, just a month ago. "Marcus, she actually asked me about perfume on my clothes last night. Almost felt bad for her. Gabrielle, what did you say?" "Marcus, product launch event. She bought it immediately. She wants to believe everything's fine so badly that she'll accept any explanation. Gabrielle, poor thing. Almost makes me feel guilty. Almost. Marcus, don't. She's had her time. Now it's yours. Once we get through this divorce and I've protected the assets, we'll have everything we need. Let her have her career and her pride. We'll have everything else. Reading that made me want to vomit, but it also made me absolutely certain about what I needed to do. I changed passwords on accounts Marcus didn't know I had access to. See, being married to a billionaire teaches you things. I'd always kept my own separate accounts. My surgical income, my investments, my safety nets. I'd been financially independent when I met Marcus, and I'd stayed that way even in marriage. But I'd also been added to certain accounts and trusts over the years. Marcus thought he'd hidden money in places I didn't know about. But he'd forgotten that early in our marriage, when things were good and he trusted me completely. He'd given me access to his family's offshore banking systems. For emergencies, he'd said. In case something happened to him, he'd never revoked that access. Probably forgot it existed, so I could see everything, including the $200 million he thought he'd successfully hidden. I secured it all, changed access codes, added my own layers of protection, made sure that when the hammer dropped, nothing could disappear. I also did something else, something Malcolm suggested that felt almost too aggressive, but I trusted his judgment. I contacted 3 of Marcus's major business partners independently. Richard Castellano, yes, the same name as his attorney, but a different man, who'd invested $70 million in Marcus's Dubai hotel project. James Worthington, who'd partnered on the Tokyo property, and David Chen, who was funding the new Paris development. I didn't tell them anything about the divorce. I just arranged friendly coffee meetings, just the wife of their business partner touching base before the holidays. Perfectly normal. But I asked questions. Careful, strategic questions about the projects, about timelines, about profit margins, about the financial structures Marcus had set up. And they talked. God, did they talk. Rich men love explaining their business acumen to women they think are just being friendly and supportive. I recorded every conversation, perfectly legal in New York, with one-party consent. And what they revealed was damning. Marcus had been lying to them too, inflating costs, hiding profits, using their investments in ways that weren't disclosed in the partnership agreements. Nothing massive enough to be obvious fraud, but enough to make them very, very unhappy if they knew. Malcolm nearly danced when I brought him those recordings. This is leverage, he said. When this blows up, these men are going to want distance from Marcus immediately. They're going to force him out of these projects to protect their own reputations. Everything was falling into place, but I still had to plan an actual Christmas dinner, because the show had to go on. I told our chef I wanted to oversee everything personally this year, selected wines from our cellar that cost thousands per bottle, had the table set with the Aldridge family china, pieces that had been passed down for 4 generations. Each plate was worth more than most people made in a month. I arranged flowers that had been flown in from Ecuador, roses and orchids in deep reds and whites. They cost $11,000. I didn't even blink at the price. I bought a new dress, went to a boutique in Manhattan that catered to women who didn't look at price tags. The saleswoman brought me a midnight blue velvet gown that fit like it had been designed on my body. Off the shoulder, elegant, powerful. It cost $18,000. I wore it out of the store. I got my hair done by Ricardo, my stylist who flew in from Paris specifically for me. He charged $15,000 for the visit, but he was worth every penny. He gave me these soft, elegant curls that cascaded down my back, made me look like royalty. Makeup by Simone, an artist who usually only worked with celebrities and for fashion weeks. She made my skin glow, my eyes dramatic but not overdone, natural but devastating. When I looked in the mirror on Christmas Eve afternoon, I saw a woman who was absolutely stunning, powerful, in complete control, a queen preparing for battle. My children were the hardest part, getting them out of the house without making them suspicious or upset. I sat them down on the morning of Christmas Eve in the living room. Isaiah, Zara, and Elijah, all looking at me with their beautiful faces, so innocent, so trusting. "Babies," I said, "Mommy has to handle some grown-up business tonight, some boring adult dinner stuff. So, you're going to have a special Christmas Eve sleepover at Uncle Tobias's house with your cousins. How does that sound?" Their faces lit up. Tobias's kids were close to their ages, and sleepovers there were always fun. "But we always have Christmas Eve here," Isaiah said. He was 12, old enough to sense when something wasn't quite right. "I know, baby," But this year is a little different. I promise you, tomorrow morning, Christmas morning, everything will be perfect. We'll have our regular Christmas. This is just for one night. Will Daddy be there? Elijah asked. Daddy has some work things to handle too, but he'll see you tomorrow. It wasn't quite a lie. Marcus would definitely see them tomorrow, just not in the way he expected. I hugged each of them, held them tight, breathed in their smells. Isaiah's sharp, clean scent from his morning shower, Zara's strawberry shampoo, Elijah's little boy smell of grass and adventure. I love you all so much, I whispered into their hair, more than anything in this world. Tobias picked them up at 3. As I watched his car drive away with my children safely inside, I felt the last piece of my heart that was still soft harden into steel. Now there was nothing left to protect. Nothing holding me back. Just the mission. Marcus came home at 4:30, which was early for him, but expected since we had dinner at 6. He found me in our bedroom, putting on my jewelry. Diamond earrings, a platinum bracelet, my wedding ring, which felt like it was burning my finger, but I kept it on for appearances. You look beautiful, he said, and he sounded like he meant it, like he could actually still see me as beautiful while planning to destroy me. Thank you. Where are the kids? At Tobias's. I thought it might be better to have an adult evening first. They'll be home tomorrow morning for our family Christmas. He looked surprised. Good thinking. That'll make this easier. Easier. Like what he was about to do wasn't an abomination. Is Gabrielle coming at 6 with everyone else? I asked, my voice perfectly calm. Yes. Thank you for being mature about this, Vivian. I know it's not easy, but this is the right thing for everyone. The right thing. He actually believed that. I turned to look at him. Really looked at him. This man I'd loved for 14 years. This man I'd built a life with. This man who'd fathered my children. And I felt absolutely nothing. The love was gone, burned away by betrayal and replaced with pure, cold strategy. I smiled at him. Of course, Marcus. We're adults. We can handle complex situations. He smiled back, relieved. That's my girl. But I wasn't his girl. Not anymore. I wasn't anyone's girl. I was a queen about to execute a king. Guests started arriving at 6. First came Vivian, Marcus's mother, 73 years old, elegant in a cream-colored suit, her silver hair perfectly styled. She'd always treated me with respect and affection, called me daughter, bragged about me to her friends. My daughter-in-law, the cardiac surgeon. I hugged her warmly at the door. Vivian, you look beautiful, as do you, dear. This house is stunning as always. You have such a gift for creating warmth. If she only knew that what I'd created tonight wasn't warmth. It was an inferno. Then came Tobias and Maya. My brother hugged me tight, whispering in my ear, "You good?" "I'm perfect," I whispered back. Maya squeezed my hand. "We've got you." They knew everything. They were here as my backup, my support, my witnesses. Marcus had invited 2 of his business partners for this intimate family dinner, which should have been my first clue that this wasn't just about introducing Gabrielle. This was about power, about showing these important men that he could control his wife, that he could have exactly the life he wanted on his terms. Richard Castellano arrived with his wife, Patricia. Not the attorney Richard. This was the investor Richard, 60 years old, self-made billionaire, built a pharmaceutical empire from nothing. He shook my hand warmly. "Vivienne, thank you for having us. Patricia's been looking forward to this all week. We're delighted you could join us." Then James Worthington and his wife Catherine. James was old money. Family went back to the Mayflower. His approval meant everything in certain circles. "Your home is exquisite as always," Catherine said, kissing my cheek. These were people who valued reputation above almost everything. People who sat on boards and belonged to clubs where one whiff of scandal could end you. People who needed to believe their business partners were stable, trustworthy, above reproach. Marcus had no idea what he'd done by inviting them here tonight. And then she arrived. Gabrielle, 27 years old, blonde hair in loose waves, wearing a white dress, white, to Christmas dinner, like she was making some kind of statement about purity or new beginnings. The dress had cutouts showing her flat stomach and sides, Beautiful, I'll give her that. Young and fresh and glowing with the kind of confidence that comes from thinking you've won. Marcus met her at the door. I watched from the hallway as he helped her with her coat, his hand lingering on her shoulder just a moment too long. Then he brought her into the foyer where everyone was gathered with drinks. Everyone. I'd like you to meet Gabrielle Rousseau. She's an art consultant who's been helping me acquire pieces for the new Paris hotel. She's from Paris originally, but doesn't have family here in the States, so I thought it would be nice to include her in our celebration. The room went silent. That particular kind of silence that happens when everyone knows something is wrong, but no one knows exactly what. Vivian's smile became tight, polite, but strained. Her eyes moved from Gabrielle to Marcus to me, trying to understand. Richard and James exchanged glances. Their wives looked confused. Tobias's jaw clenched. Maya reached for his hand, a silent reminder to stay calm. But me, I glided across that marble floor like I was floating. I was wearing 5-inch heels, but I didn't make a sound, just smooth, graceful movement. I walked right up to Gabrielle and took both her hands in mine, smiled warmly into her young, beautiful face. Welcome to our home, Gabrielle. I'm Vivian. I'm so glad Marcus thought to include you. No one should be alone at Christmas. I saw the relief flood through her body. Her shoulders relaxed. She smiled back, genuine and warm. Thank you so much for having me, Mrs. Aldridge. Your home is absolutely stunning. Marcus talks about it all the time. Marcus talks about it, not about me, about the house. Please, call me Vivienne. Any friend of Marcus's is welcome here. I saw Marcus exhale, saw the tension leave his body. He actually thought I'd accepted this, thought I was playing along, thought he'd won. I led everyone into the dining room. The table was set like something from a magazine. The Aldridge china, gleaming in candlelight. Crystal glasses, catching the light from the chandelier. Those $11,000 flowers creating a stunning centerpiece. I'd seated everyone strategically. Marcus at the head of the table, of course. Me at the opposite end. Gabrielle to Marcus's right, directly across from Tobias, who I knew could keep his composure even while staring daggers at her. Vivian to Marcus's left, close enough to hear everything. The business partners and their wives arranged so they had a clear view of the entire table. Everyone sat. Champagne was poured. Krug Clos d'Ambonnet, $1,600 a bottle. I made sure every glass was filled. I want to make a toast, I said, standing at my end of the table. Everyone quieted, glasses raised. Thank you all for being here tonight. Christmas is about family, about truth, about seeing people for who they really are, about light and darkness, about revelations. Marcus's face flickered, just slightly, a tiny warning bell going off in his head. So I want to toast to honesty, to truth, to facing reality, no matter how uncomfortable, to consequences. I raised my glass and smiled. Everyone drank, though several people looked confused. I sat back down, and the first course was served. Butternut squash soup with truffle oil and microgreens. Chef had outdone himself. For the first 20 minutes, I was the perfect hostess. I asked Patricia about her charity work, asked Catherine about her daughter's recent wedding, made sure everyone's wine glasses were filled with bottles that cost more than most people's monthly rent. I asked Gabrielle about her work, about her gallery, about how she'd gotten into art dealing. She got comfortable, started talking more, animated and enthusiastic. She told a story about acquiring a painting from an estate sale that turned out to be worth 10 times what she'd paid. Everyone laughed. She was charming, I'll give her that. Marcus was relaxed now, smiling, playing the role of gracious host, probably thinking he'd pulled off the impossible, getting his wife and mistress at the same table with no drama. The main course was served. Herb-crusted rack of lamb with roasted root vegetables and a port wine reduction, sides of my grandmother's sweet potato pie, and the honey-glazed ham I'd made myself. This is incredible, Vivian, James said. You've outdone yourself. I smiled. Thank you. I believe in making every detail perfect, in planning carefully, in making sure nothing is left to chance. I let that hang in the air for a moment. Then I started talking about marriage, about partnership, about what it takes to build a life with someone over 14 years. When you've been with someone that long, I said, you build something that can't be easily shaken. You create a foundation, trust, commitment, shared history. Gabrielle actually asked, her voice sweet and innocent. How did you and Marcus meet? Oh, I love this story, Vivian said, smiling for the first time all evening. So I told it. Every romantic detail. Our first meeting at a charity gala, how Marcus had walked right up to me and said he knew he was going to marry me someday. Our first date at a tiny Italian restaurant in the village, how he'd proposed on a beach in Santorini at sunset. I talked about our wedding, about the vows we'd made, for better or worse, in sickness and in health, forsaking all others. I said that last part looking right at Marcus. His jaw tightened. Marriage is sacred, I continued. It's a promise you make in front of God and everyone you love. A commitment that's not supposed to be broken. Not for anything. The room had gotten very quiet. Everyone could feel the shift in energy, even if they didn't understand why. I stood up again, my wine glass in hand. I'd like to make another toast, I said. Marcus was pale now. His hands were gripping his wine glass so hard I thought it might break. To truth, I said. To honesty. To the real people behind the masks we wear. To seeing things clearly. I took a sip of wine, then set my glass down. And smiled. That's when the screens came on. We had a sophisticated home theater system throughout the house. Screens that could descend from the ceiling with the touch of a button. I'd told Marcus I wanted to show a family video montage after dinner. Something sentimental and sweet. He'd loved the idea. But what appeared on the 3 massive screens positioned around the dining room wasn't family videos. It was a bank statement. Marcus's offshore account in the Cayman Islands, with a balance of $87 million. The image stayed on screen for 5 full seconds, long enough for everyone to read it clearly, to see the account number, the balance, Marcus's name. Then it changed. Wire transfer records, showing money being moved from our joint accounts to the offshore account. 50 million transferred over the course of 18 months, in increments designed to avoid detection. Then, property records. A condo in Monaco purchased through a shell corporation called Aldridge International Holdings. Purchase price, $12 million. Buyer of record, Gabrielle Rousseau. A penthouse in Soho, $8 million. Titled to Gabrielle Rousseau. A gallery space in Chelsea, $15 million property. Given to Gabrielle Rousseau, rent-free, with all operating costs paid by Aldridge Holdings. The room had detonated. Vivian made a sound somewhere between a gasp and a wail. She stood up so fast her chair fell backward, crashing against the floor. Marcus. Her voice was shaking. What is this? What am I looking at? Richard and James had gone completely still. Their faces were transforming from confused to horrified as they realized what they were seeing. Their business partner had been hiding massive amounts of money, moving assets in ways that suggested fraud, and they were about to be associated with it. Tobias was standing too, but he was calm, ready to intervene if needed, but trusting me to handle this. Maya had her phone out, recording. Evidence. Gabrielle was crying. Actual tears streaming down her face, her hands shaking. She was trying to get up from the table, her chair scraping against the floor. Marcus was frozen. His mouth was opening and closing, but no sound was coming out. All that smooth charm, all that confident control, completely gone. But the screens weren't done. Now, they showed photographs. Marcus and Gabrielle on a yacht in Turks and Caicos. She was wearing a bikini. He had his arms around her. The timestamp showed. It was from July, when Marcus had told me he was at a tech conference in San Francisco. Marcus and Gabrielle at a restaurant in Paris, holding hands across the table. The timestamp, September, when he told me he was meeting with investors and it was too boring for me to come along. Marcus and Gabrielle at the Monaco condo, the one he'd bought for her. They were on the balcony, overlooking the ocean. She was wearing the Cartier bracelet. The $38,000 bracelet he'd told me was a client gift. Then came the text messages, hundreds of them, scrolling across the screens. Marcus, she asked about the perfume again. almost felt bad. Gabrielle, what did you say? Marcus, product launch. She believes everything I tell her. Gabrielle, poor thing. Almost feel guilty. Almost. Marcus, don't. Once we get through the divorce, we'll have everything. Let her have her career. We'll have the money. More messages. Gabrielle, when are you going to tell her about us? Marcus, soon. I need to move a few more assets first. My lawyer says we need to reposition about 200 million before I file. Make it look like business losses. Then she can't touch it. Gabrielle, you're brilliant. Marcus, I know. Catherine actually gasped. Patricia had her hand over her mouth. But the screens still weren't done. Now they showed email exchanges between Marcus and his attorney. Years of emails. Subject, divorce strategy. Richard, we need to start positioning Vivian as unstable. Her demanding career makes her look like she prioritizes work over family. Any anger or emotional response can be leveraged as evidence she's unfit for primary custody. The narrative we want is successful black businessman trying to save his marriage to his cold, career-obsessed wife who can't satisfy his needs. Another email from a year ago. We need to move the real estate holdings into offshore entities. Make them untraceable in a divorce. I've identified several properties we can transfer without triggering immediate attention. Let's start with the Monaco property. We'll use shell corporations registered in Delaware. And the final email from just 3 weeks ago. Everything is in place. Once I tell Vivian, she'll either accept the arrangement or we'll proceed with the divorce. Either way, I've protected the assets. She'll get minimal settlement. The prenup combined with the restructured holdings means she walks away with maybe 50 million if she's lucky. I keep everything else. The screens went dark. The room exploded. What the hell is this, Marcus? Vivian was screaming now, actually screaming. Her composed, elegant demeanor completely shattered. You've been stealing from your own family? You've been planning to destroy Vivian? Richard stood up, his face purple with rage. You moved marital assets offshore? Do you have any idea what this does to our business dealings? The SEC is going to crawl up every single one of your projects. James was already on his phone. I could hear him talking rapidly to someone, probably his attorney. Distance, liability, immediate action. Gabrielle was sobbing, trying to push her chair back, trying to get to the door. I didn't know, she kept saying. I didn't know about the wife. I didn't know. But that was a lie. The text messages had shown she knew exactly what she was doing. Marcus finally found his voice. Vivian, he stammered. This is insane. Where did you get? You can't just... Careful, I said, my voice cutting through the chaos like a blade. Everyone went silent. I walked slowly to Marcus's end of the table, my heels clicking against the marble floor, each step deliberate. You were about to call me crazy, I said softly. Unstable, emotional, just like you planned to in court. He went white. But here's what you forgot, Marcus. I'm not the woman you thought you married. Or maybe I am, and you just never paid attention. I walked to the sideboard and picked up the leather portfolio I'd placed there earlier. Opened it. These are divorce papers, I said, my voice steady and clear. They include every piece of evidence of your infidelity, your financial fraud, your conspiracy to hide marital assets, your tax evasion through offshore accounts, your money laundering through shell corporations. I placed the folder in front of him with a heavy thud. There are also restraining orders, which went into effect at 5 o'clock this evening, preventing you from accessing or moving any additional assets. Every account is frozen. Every property is secured. As of 1 hour ago, you can't touch anything. Marcus's hands were shaking. Vivian, please, we can talk about this. We can talk? I smiled. You want to talk now? After 8 months of lying? After years of planning how to destroy me? I pulled out another document, and this is a lawsuit against Gabrielle for fraud, conspiracy, and accepting stolen property. Those apartments, that gallery, that car, all purchased with marital funds. I'm taking every single thing back. Gabrielle made a choking sound and ran from the room. We heard the front door slam a moment later. I turned to Richard and James, who were both standing now, phones in hand, faces grim. Gentlemen, I'm sorry you had to be here for this, but I thought you should know that the financial documents on those screens represent only a fraction of what Marcus has been hiding. My forensic accountants found evidence that he's been inflating costs on your joint projects and pocketing the difference. I have those records available if you'd like them for your own legal teams. Richard's face went from purple to nearly black with rage. He turned to Marcus. You stole from us too? James was already walking toward the door. My attorney will be in touch, he said coldly. Consider our partnership dissolved. Effective immediately. Catherine and Patricia followed their husbands without a word. They knew what this meant. Scandal. Headlines. Association with fraud. They wanted distance. Fast. Vivian was crying openly now. She walked up to Marcus, her face twisted with disappointment and disgust. I raised you better than this, she said, her voice breaking. I raised you to be a man of honor, to respect your commitments, to treat people with dignity. How could you do this to Vivian? To your children? To our family name? Mom, please, don't call me that right now, she said. I can't even look at you. She turned to me, tears streaming down her face. Vivian, I'm so sorry. I'm so deeply, profoundly sorry. This is not who I taught him to be. I took her hands. I know, Vivian. This isn't your fault. She hugged me tight, then left with as much dignity as she could muster. Now it was just me, Marcus, Tobias, and Maya. Marcus tried one more time. He grabbed my arm. Vivian, please. I made a mistake. I'm sorry. We can fix this. We can go to counseling. I'll end things with Gabrielle. We can save this. I looked down at his hand on my arm, then back up at his face. Take your hand off me. My voice was ice. He let go. You want to fix this? I said quietly. There is no fixing this. You didn't make a mistake, Marcus. You made 1,000 calculated choices over years. You planned my destruction while I was loving you, while I was raising our children, while I was building a life I thought we were sharing. I stepped closer. He actually stepped back. You threatened my career, my relationship with my children. You planned to paint me as the stereotype you knew would destroy me. The angry black woman, unstable, unfit. You were going to use racism and misogyny as weapons against me. I smiled, but you forgot who you were dealing with. I walked to the door and opened it. Malcolm Reynolds walked in, right on cue, with 2 police officers behind him. Mr. Aldridge, Malcolm said pleasantly, you need to leave this property immediately. Mrs. Aldridge has a restraining order granting her exclusive use of this home pending divorce proceedings. If you refuse, these officers will arrest you for trespassing. You can't do this, Marcus said, but his voice was shaking now. This is my family's house. My name is on the deed. Actually, Malcolm said, pulling out documents, this house is jointly titled marital property, and given the evidence of your financial fraud and your stated intent to hide assets, the court has granted Mrs. Aldridge emergency, exclusive occupancy. One of the officers stepped forward. Sir, you need to come with us now. Marcus looked around the room desperately, seeking allies. But there were none. Tobias looked ready to physically throw him out. Maya was still recording everything. I was just standing there, smiling that calm smile. This isn't over, Marcus said, his voice breaking. You think you've won? I have resources. I'll fight this. I'll make sure you... The SEC is very interested in those offshore accounts, I said softly. And the IRS has some questions about the tax implications of those hidden assets. The State Bar Association is reviewing the emails between you and your attorney about conspiracy to commit fraud. I walked closer. You're going to need every penny you have left for the lawyers you're about to require. Criminal defense attorneys are expensive. Criminal? His face went white. Hiding $200 million in assets? Malcolm said cheerfully. That's not just a civil matter. That's fraud, tax evasion, money laundering. The U.S. Attorney's Office is very interested. The officers took Marcus by the arms, gently but firmly. He was crying now, actually crying, tears running down his face, his body shaking. "Vivian, please, I'm sorry. I love you. We can fix this. Think about the children. Please." But I just stood there, calm, composed, still wearing that smile, because that smile wasn't about happiness. It was about power. It was about knowing I'd been 10 steps ahead the whole time. It was about refusing to be the victim in someone else's story. The officers escorted him out. We heard the front door close. Then, silence. I stood in my dining room, surrounded by the remnants of a Christmas dinner that had just detonated a man's entire life. Tobias walked over and hugged me tight. "You did it, sis." Maya was still recording. "Got everything," she said. "Every moment." Malcolm was already on his phone, probably talking to the U.S. Attorney's office, coordinating next steps. And me? I sat down at the table, poured myself another glass of that $1,600 champagne, and took a long, slow sip. I just destroyed my husband, obliterated his reputation, set in motion legal proceedings that would consume the next year of his life, exposed him in front of his mother, his business partners, his mistress. And I felt absolutely nothing. No guilt, no regret, no sadness, just peace. If you're still here, if you've watched this whole thing, I need you to do something for me. Hit that like button right now. Subscribe to Cedar Light Love Stories because we have more stories coming that will absolutely blow your mind. Stories about people who refused to be victims, who stood up when everyone expected them to sit down. Drop a comment telling me what you would have done in this situation. Would you have been this strategic, or would you have confronted him immediately? I want to hear from you. Now let me tell you what happened next, because the Christmas dinner was just the beginning. The divorce proceedings took 6 months. Once all the evidence came out, and it all came out, every email, every text, every offshore account, Marcus's attorneys advised him to settle. They told him if he fought this in court, he'd not only lose but potentially face criminal charges that could put him in prison. The prenup he'd made me sign 14 years ago was voided, completely, because it turns out that when you commit fraud, when you hide assets, and plan to defraud your spouse in a divorce, your prenup becomes worthless. Malcolm was brilliant, ruthless and brilliant. He went through every single asset, every account, every property, created a complete financial picture of everything Marcus had tried to hide. In the end, I got the Connecticut estate, the Manhattan apartment, 65% of all marital assets, full physical custody of the children, with Marcus getting supervised visitation until he could prove stability. 65% of billions is a lot of money. I won't pretend otherwise, but it wasn't about the money. It was about justice. It was about making sure he understood that you don't get to destroy people without consequences. The SEC investigation into Marcus's offshore accounts resulted in massive fines, over $50 million in penalties. The IRS came after him too. Turns out hiding money from your spouse also means hiding it from the government. Another $30 million in back taxes and penalties. His business partners did exactly what I knew they would. Richard and James forced him out of their joint ventures, called emergency board meetings, voted him out, released statements distancing themselves from his personal financial improprieties. The Tokyo Hotel project? Gone. The Dubai property? Bought out his stake at a fraction of what it was worth. The Paris development? They brought in a new partner, and Marcus's shares were diluted to almost nothing. His reputation in those elite circles he cared so much about? Destroyed, not by me, by his own choices. The country clubs quietly suggested his membership might not be renewed. The charity boards he'd served on asked for his resignation. The society pages that used to feature him stopped calling. He became toxic, and in his world, nothing is worse than being toxic. Gabrielle disappeared from his life approximately 14 seconds after the lawsuits started flying. The moment she realized those apartments weren't actually hers, that the gallery was going to be taken back, that she was facing potential criminal charges for accepting stolen property, she vanished. Moved back to Paris, according to what I heard. Tried to rebuild her art dealer career. But the scandal followed her. People talked. People always talk. She actually tried to sue me 6 months later for damages to her reputation and emotional distress. Can you imagine? The woman who helped my husband steal from me sued me for damaging her reputation. Her lawsuit was dismissed with prejudice. The judge literally said, "You cannot benefit from illegal activity, and then claim damages when those illegal benefits are recovered." Marcus tried to maintain contact with the children at first. The supervised visitation was every other weekend. A court-appointed supervisor would sit there while he tried to be dad. But Isaiah, my brilliant 12-year-old, figured out what his father had done. He's smart. He reads. He heard things at school because, of course, this became news. Billionaire's divorce. Financial fraud. It was in the papers. One day, about 4 months after the divorce was finalized, Isaiah asked me point blank, "Did Dad try to steal our money and leave you with nothing?" I sat him down in the living room, looked into his eyes. He has Marcus's eyes, which used to hurt but doesn't anymore. "Yes, baby, he did. But I protected us. I protected our family." Isaiah cried. Then he got angry. Then he told me he didn't want to see his father for a while. The twins were younger, didn't fully understand. I didn't poison them against Marcus. I didn't have to. His own actions did that. The supervised visits were awkward. Marcus didn't know how to be a dad when he couldn't use money to buy their affection, couldn't take them on extravagant trips or buy expensive presents without court approval. Eventually, the visits became less frequent. The kids would have other plans. Birthday parties, sports, school projects. Marcus would reschedule, then cancel, then reschedule again. Last I heard, he sees them maybe once a month, for a few hours, and it's painful and awkward for everyone. As for me, I'm thriving in ways I never imagined possible. My surgical career has never been better. About 8 months after the divorce, I was promoted to Chief of Cardiac Surgery at New York Presbyterian, the youngest person and the first black woman to ever hold that position at that hospital. I started a foundation called Heartbeat Initiative. We provide free cardiac care to underserved communities. We've done over 200 surgeries in the past year for people who couldn't afford them, saved 200 lives that might have been lost. It's something I'd always wanted to do but never had the time or focus for when I was trying to hold together a failing marriage. My children are thriving, happy, well-adjusted. They have a mother who showed them that you don't accept disrespect from anyone, not from a stranger, not from a friend, not even from someone who's supposed to love you. Isaiah is becoming a remarkable young man. He treats people with kindness and respect because he saw what happens when you don't. He's applying to prep schools now, wants to be a lawyer, says he wants to help people protect themselves the way I protected our family. The twins are doing beautifully. Zara is still determined to be an astronaut, takes advanced science classes. Elijah discovered he loves cooking and spends hours in our kitchen with our chef learning techniques. They're surrounded by love and stability. And me, personally, I found peace, real peace. Not the kind that comes from pretending everything's fine, the kind that comes from walking through fire and coming out stronger, from facing your worst nightmare and realizing you can survive it, from understanding your own power. I started dating again about 8 months ago. Nothing serious yet. I'm in no rush, but it's nice to remember what it feels like to be seen, to be appreciated, to have someone interested in who I am, not just what I can provide. Janelle set me up with a colleague of hers, a professor at Columbia. He's kind, he's intelligent, he's impressed by my career instead of threatened by it. We'll see where it goes. I also rediscovered parts of myself I'd lost during my marriage. I started painting again, something I'd loved in college but abandoned because there was never time. I travel now, real traveling, not just business trips. I took the kids to Ghana last summer, showed them where our ancestors came from. We stood in Cape Coast Castle, and I told them about strength, about resilience, about how we come from people who survive the unsurvivable. I take time for myself now. Massages, spa days, reading for pleasure instead of just medical journals. I sit in my garden and drink coffee and watch the sunrise and feel grateful for everything I have. I found peace in myself, in my strength, in my ability to stand up even when the whole world expects you to sit down and be quiet. See, The thing about being a black woman is that people always underestimate us. Always. They expect us to be quiet, to shrink ourselves, to take disrespect with a smile, and be grateful for whatever scraps we're given. We're supposed to be strong, but not too strong. Graceful, but not powerful. We're expected to hold everything together while being torn apart. We're supposed to be the mule of the world, as Zora Neale Hurston said, carrying everyone else's burdens while our own backs break. But that night, last Christmas Eve, I smiled on my terms. And that smile said everything without saying a word. It said, I'm smarter than you, I'm stronger than you, and I'm 10 steps ahead of you. It said, you mistook my grace for weakness, and now you'll pay for that mistake. It said, I'm not the victim in this story. I'm not the supporting character in your narrative. I'm the queen of my own story. It said, you thought you could break me, but all you did was forge me into something unbreakable. That smile was a promise, a threat, a declaration of war, and a victory announcement, all at once. And when those screens came on, when the truth was revealed in front of everyone, that smile said one more thing: checkmate. I've gotten messages from women all over the world since this story started circulating. Women who saw themselves in my situation, who'd been underestimated, who'd been told to accept disrespect with grace, who'd been threatened into silence. And they all ask the same question: how did you stay so calm? The answer is simple. I didn't. I wasn't calm. I was strategic. There's a difference. Inside, I was screaming. I was breaking. I was feeling everything: rage, grief, betrayal, fear, heartbreak, all of it. But I didn't let Marcus see it. I didn't let him use my pain as a weapon. I took all that emotion and I transformed it into fuel, into focus, into a plan so comprehensive, so airtight, that he never saw it coming. I stayed calm because calmness was my weapon, because the moment I showed emotion, he would have used it against me, would have called me unstable, would have said, see, this is what I've been dealing with. So I smiled. I was gracious. I was the perfect hostess, and I destroyed him. That's the thing they don't tell you about revenge. It's not hot. It's not impulsive. It's not about screaming or throwing things or making a scene. Real revenge is cold. It's calculated. It's patient. Real revenge is staying calm while you systematically dismantle someone's entire life, piece by piece, using their own actions against them. Real revenge is smiling while you watch everything they built crumble because of choices they made. I didn't destroy Marcus. He destroyed himself. I just made sure everyone could see it clearly. So that's my story. That's how one Christmas dinner changed everything. That's how a queen handles disrespect. That's how you stand up when someone expects you to sit down. That's how you take your power back when someone tries to steal it. If this story resonated with you, if it moved you, if it inspired you, I need you to do something for me right now. Hit that like button. Smash it. Subscribe to Cedar Light Love Stories. We have more stories coming that will absolutely blow your mind. Stories about people who refused to be victims, who fought back with intelligence and strategy, who turned their pain into power. Turn on notifications so you never miss a story. And drop a comment below. Tell me, have you ever had to smile through something difficult and come out on top? Have you ever been underestimated? Have you ever had someone mistake your grace for weakness? Tell me your story. Share your experience, because we're building a community here, a community of people who refuse to be broken, who understand that strength isn't about never falling, it's about getting back up and making sure whoever knocked you down regrets it. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it, with someone who's going through something similar, with someone who needs to remember their own power. And remember these words: never let anyone mistake your grace for weakness. Never let anyone use your strength against you. Never accept less than you deserve. You are not required to set yourself on fire to keep other people warm. You are not required to accept disrespect to keep the peace. You are not required to shrink yourself to make someone else comfortable. You are allowed to take up space. You are allowed to demand respect. You are allowed to walk away from anything that diminishes you. You are allowed to smile while you burn down everything that tried to destroy you. I'm Vivian Aldridge, and I'm thriving. I'll see you in the next one.